Cool. So thank you, everybody. Today, my guest is Karl Mulligan, and Karl is the CEO of Appify. Appify is a leading technology development company specializing in mobile application development for iOS and Android. They provide strategic and innovation support for other businesses. So thank you very much, Karl, for being here.
Pleasure.
So maybe my first question would be, how did you get to Appify? What was the journey to become the CEO of Appify? And did you start as a developer perhaps or a freelancer and build an agency around you? Or was there a different kind of story going into the agency world?
The journey is quite different to that. My background is in all things commercial development in a number of sectors. Mm-hmm. I would have worked in areas as diverse as sport. I was the sales director of the Football Association of Ireland at a point. Mm-hmm. But I was also in real estate and in property. So as I say, my background is quite diverse. And then about 10 years ago, I started to get involved in the digital world. And I worked with a number of organizations, from startups to medium-sized organizations that were ready to scale. And that brought me in contact with a number of mobile development agencies. And one of those agencies at a point offered me the role of their global business development director, which I accepted. And that I loved it, I have to say. I love the environment, I love the business. But it's obviously a sector that's going through some fairly rapid and fundamental change in terms of how services are delivered. And so even though everything was going extremely well and we were getting a lot of things right, I also felt that there was probably a better way of delivering services. And so about 18 months ago, I decided that we would create a new digital services agency that delivered services to clients in, I won't say a radically different way, but certainly in a nuanced manner that I felt would deliver greater value.
Okay. So how are you delivering the services before versus the new manner that you've talked about? What's the difference there?
So basically, in the previous agency, and I had seen this across other agencies that I had experience of as well, they kind of went through similar growth patterns, if they were good, in that they would start to acquire some good brand clients, and they would build revenues, in some cases pretty quickly, and then would need to scale their resources to deliver services into those clients. And so they would add people and open new offices and acquire floors in existing buildings and all of these things to try to scale to deliver against the demand that they were creating. And then ultimately, in several cases, that then created major problems in that you then create very large fixed overhead. It's difficult to scale up and scale down the resource that is available to you, and it means that ultimately the flexibility around how you deliver services is compromised, and the efficiencies that you can pass on to clients become more and more difficult to deliver, because ultimately, if you have large fixed overhead, in order to be commercially viable, that cost has to be passed on to a client at some point in time. So given that the digital world is becoming vastly more service on demand orientated, vastly more lean and agile in terms of how clients expect services to be delivered, having a fixed high overhead model that doesn't allow to build and reduce team sizes very quickly just doesn't work. I mean, that's not to say that I'm not suggesting that no agency can operate that model, but it's I don't feel that it offers the best solutions from a client's perspective, is my view of the world.
Mm-hmm. But how big is your agency, and in terms of employees? Like, how many people are working for you currently?
So at a point in time, our business had 35 people, well, 35 service delivery people, and then sort of all of the admin and back of office that would be associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Our current organization has 2 employees, and I'm one of them. And so what we did in 2018 was we went to the market, and in effect we assessed the capabilities and scalability of 2,850 different digital services units across Europe, which was a fairly tedious and time-consuming exercise. So we started off with a simple questionnaire. Out of the questionnaire, we filtered the 2,850 down to about 900-ish. Then we sent a vastly more detailed questionnaire out of those 900. We filtered that then on the basis of response down to about 100. We physically reached out to those 100 agencies and spoke to the vast majority of them directly, by way almost as an interview. And then we got that list down to less than 20. And then with that list of 20 potential selected partners, we went and visited all of them to try to get to understand their culture, their people, what services they deliver and to who, what their work methodologies are, what their satisfaction ratings are, what their financial stability looked like. And out of those 20 meetings, we created a panel of approaching 10 agencies that we felt could deliver excellent service at excellent value price points. And we started to build relationships with those agencies. So now, when we take on a project, or when we're offered a project, we basically put that out to what we feel are the 3 or 4 most appropriate agencies to deliver those services, depending on the client's requirements. And we try not to make that a competitive type pitch environment, but we ask the 3 or 4 agencies then to submit why they feel that they are best suited to deliver these services, what the price point would be, what the delivery time period would be, all of those things. And out of that process, we will select an agency to deliver the services. Now, we then sit between the client and our partner agency, and we basically oversee every element of the project. So we will have very, very specific requirements in terms of how the agency delivers those services. So we have a services delivery manual that they need to comply with. It took us quite a bit of time to put that together, but we have done now, and it's proven extremely successful. So the agency delivers services in a very pre-prescribed manner, using very definitive work methodologies that we have set out, with very stringent communication processes and quality assurance processes set around it. And we then basically micromanage the delivery of that process to ensure that the client is getting the maximum quality of output at the most economical rate that's available. What that business model allows us to do is a number of things. The first thing is we don't have large fixed overhead that gets passed on to a client. So the service delivery model is lean and highly economical. That's the first thing. The second thing is we can offer service on demand, because if I need 1 developer in the morning, I can find 1 developer in the morning. If I need 10, I can get 10. If I need 50, I can get 50. But I always know that the agencies delivering these services and the professionals that are actually doing the work are people that we have strong relationships with, people who have a very strong vested interest in safeguarding the quality of their relationship with us, because they know that there's more business in the future. And we know that they're going to deliver services according to our best practice. So the quality is right, the delivery methodology is right, the quality of the output is right, and the pricing is right. And ultimately, everybody wins.
That is very interesting what you just went through, because I have an app development agency as well. So my first question is, do you still accept the partners? But besides that, we have actually 30 people as well. And I can see the problems you were describing before, because obviously overhead that has to be included in the price for the client project. So I was just wondering, in terms of what you just said, so who's managing the product from a project management standpoint? Is that still you, or is that passed on to the partner agency as well?
Okay, so we would have the second employee in our business basically does the micromanagement of the individual projects. So he is our chief strategy and innovation officer, and he manages the day-to-day relationships with all of our partner agencies. He's the one who's responsible for the implementation of the quality and delivery processes, and he's the one ultimately who manages the quality of the output. So that's his role and responsibility. Sometimes I do get pulled into projects, and if the client needs me to intervene at some juncture, I mean, I'm always available to do that. The client relationship ultimately is sacrosanct to me, and I'll do everything that I can to maximize the value of those relationships. So I am, of course, available to do that. But basically, I run the business. So, obviously, apart from that, having an app development agency yourself, you'll have to be aware of all of the other bits and pieces that are required of a chief executive officer. So I look after all of that as well.
Right. And so in which stage of the sales process do you involve the partner agency in the let's say the project? So let's say that you have a specification. So is that the part where you send out a bid? Because I know websites, let's say Clutch.co is one website where they send out bids to agencies, and then you have to compete, and whoever wins is probably the cheapest, which you're not doing at the moment. You're not a directory, right? So
no.
You're essentially you're send out bids to these agencies, and whoever feels and whoever has the capacity to do it first, and whoever feels they have the. Are these all mobile developers, or by the way, or is this?
Predominantly, yes.
Okay, got it. So yeah, so that's really interesting. So you focus mostly on sales, right, or mostly on building client relationships and.
Yeah. So yes. So finding, protecting, and adding value to client relationships. Yes.
Right, because if you think about it from the client's perspective, if one of your principles is great customer service or customer experience, then having a higher price is not really, with the overhead, is not really something that the customer wants. But it's sort of, you must do this, because I know agencies here in Prague where we are, which there are 300 people. And it's definitely a big thing. I've heard stories where founders grow agencies. So let's say they have 15 people and then do the same thing in different locations. So they keep adding locations, and they have, like, let's say 10 agencies, but they are all under one, and they still keep it agile and lean, and they can distribute the projects. So have you thought about that, or was this like a very conscious decision to just say, okay, we're just not going to focus on the delivery ourselves. We're going to have agencies for that, and we're just going to do the other stuff?
I mean, there are a number of points to address in that. When we started this journey of trying to find partner agencies, one of our selection criteria was, could this agency at some point in time represent a potential, for want of a better expression, target for ownership. So, I mean, could we conceivably aspire to own some of these agencies at some point in time? And we had a fairly narrow view of what an agency would need to look like if we were to try to acquire it or partner with it, or acquire shares in it at some point in time. Now, to be perfectly honest, since we developed these relationships and started to deliver services, that's no longer on our short to medium term agenda. I'm not saying it'll never be on our agenda, but because the model is working as well as it is right now, I almost feel that it's better to let the principals of agencies that are delivering services in an excellent way, just let them continue doing it. I mean, why would I get in the way? If they're doing something that's very, very right for our clients, I don't see any urgency right now to try to change the business model. I might change my mind at some point, but right now we have no aspiration to either recruit our own teams, open new offices, enter new territories, or to acquire existing agencies. As I say, that's not something that we will never readdress. But right now, as I say, we have no aspirations or ambitions in that area.
Right. And so this is kind of a white label cooperation. So does the end client know that you're using the agencies, or how is
Yes,
it that working out?
yes, they do. Yes, they do. I mean, we're 100% transparent.
Hmm.
So, I mean, we do have, I mean, we do have some, we do, within our processes, we do like our agency to look and feel like Appify. So, in all of the communication tools, they will use our platforms. In all of the project management tools, they will use our platforms. So, I suppose if the client wasn't, if we weren't, if we didn't tell the client in advance, by the way, the agency we're using is this agency, they might never know. But at the same time, we feel that they should know. So, in the interest of the ongoing relationship, just to make sure the client is 100% comfortable with the way in which we deliver services, we're completely transparent as to how we do it. And we also like the client to be able to interact with the delivery teams, because ultimately that helps nurture the relationship. It helps build confidence and trust. Um, it feels like it makes the development team feel like they have some kind of additional stakeholding in the quality of the output if they know who the client is and have a relationship with the client. So, I mean, in saying that we sit in the middle of that relationship, we do, in terms of quality assurance and making sure that the relationship works properly. But I mean, we try to make the whole process as interactive and as cooperative and as collaborative as we conceivably can.
Hmm. So were you, in terms of these agencies, were you approaching kind of, let's say, agencies outside of the domestic market, and were you trying to look specifically for kind of like offshoring, outsourcing agencies, or were you looking for, it didn't really matter to you in terms of that, because that ties back to how you price your services, I guess. So were you,
So,
go
so
ahead.
all of our partner agencies, to a certain extent, look quite similar, because obviously they all fit the preset criteria that we set at day one. So, I mean, they're all similar-ish in terms of size. They're all similar-ish in terms of their capacity and capability. They all have strong brand experience. They're all managed and run by the owner or the ownership team. So, as I say, sometimes they look a bit alike, but obviously they have their own core competencies, and some agencies are better at certain things than others. I mean, that's just natural. Um, but I suppose if I'm to profile what they typically look like, I mean, most of them have between 25 and 60 employees, which means that they're not small enough that they can't scale and flex, but they're not too big um, to make them to mean that we don't know the people that are in those agencies. I mean, they're all small enough that we can develop personal relationships with them. So
Mhm.
they're all that type of size. They all have strong mobile delivery capability, because that's fundamentally what we are and what we do. So they'll all be very strong in terms of iOS, Android, hybrid in a lot of cases. Obviously have strong back-end capabilities. Some of them have very, very strong UI UX. Some of them don't. Um, so, as I said, the range of skills and capabilities is slightly nuanced across all of them, and that really is why we do the kind of the selection part up front. We don't send out a tender document as such when we're trying
Yeah.
to find a partner for a project. We more send out a questionnaire, and the questionnaire basically says, if we are to deliver this project properly, we're going to need X number of developers for Y number of days with A, B, and C specializations. And we will need, these are the time frames. So are you in a position to deliver this or not? And I mean, in a lot of cases, depending on the project, that will rule out one or two of the agencies, because they don't want it. They don't have time to do it. They're busy as
Mhm.
things stand right now. They don't want to allocate resources off existing projects, whatever. So, I mean, they can opt in or opt out as they choose. And then once we're down then to the last sort of once we've ascertained who is in a position to deliver the project in the right way, within the right time frame, using the right skill sets.
Hmm.
We'll then at that point then ask them to put together a commercial proposition for the project, and we'll assess those on their merits, maybe seek some clarifications, and then pick who we feel is the right fit. Not the cheapest, not necessarily the quickest, not necessarily the biggest agency, but the agency that best fits the brief in terms of the client requirements.
Right. I have experience with this because we work with a London-based agency, and they do the similar thing where they engage with a client, and let's say the client is like a unicorn, so they have these great relationship with these people, but they don't necessarily want to work on the projects themselves. So we became partners with them, but the problem I had there was that we couldn't create value. We were kind of transactional, right? So you send us what you need, and then I give you that, but that's not what I want, right? I want to become a premium agency where I can create value for the end client, which in this case, the mediator creates value. But it is a good thing, and I see some, for the agency of our size, it fits some of our processes where we can allocate a few guys there. But it's also like there's a problem where sometimes we don't even know what happened, and they just say like, okay, right now we can't really work with you, even though it all looked great. So the end client relationship is sometimes important to us as well. But I see your point, and it's a great business model, because from my perspective, there's no way to scale an agency, and you have to decide at some point, do you want to run a product, which we've done 3 startups and they scale them, and then you have to basically quit the agency, you have to shut it down at that point. But it's a completely different business model, right? Running a product. Or you scale it based on the human resources, but then you can't compete with like people in Ukraine or all these places. Or you decide to do what you did, or there's so many ways to do it, but you
Sure.
always come to that point. So it's really interesting to hear a perspective. And so are your end clients usually kind of startups or enterprise, or who's kind of a typical client for you?
I mean, funnily enough, I mean, almost more by accident than on purpose. I mean, we actually have a pretty strong blend across both client size and vertical. So some of our projects are startups, some of them are SMEs that
Mm.
want to engage through digital with their clients, and some of these are quite mature organizations. Um, some of them are enterprises, some of them are large global brands. So I suppose if we created our own team and had our own team on site, and we had all of the restrictions in terms of the fixed nature of skill set and overhead that's associated with that, we probably wouldn't be in a position to be flexible enough to operate across all sectors and deliver services to all types of organizations, from one-man startups right up to large global brands.
Mm-hmm.
But given the fact that we have the multiplicity of delivery partners that we have, I mean, and given the fact that we profile each project individually and assign our delivery partner of best fit on each project, it means that we can as easily deliver services to a newly funded startup as we can to a very, very established brand.
I saw on your website you say you won't hear that's out of scope or send a more detailed technical specification. So what do you so when you speak with a client and let's say their scope is not technical enough,
Yeah.
how do you approach that?
Well, I mean, we do it in a few ways. I mean, as well as the technical delivery services that we have, I mean, we also have product planning capability and technical product planning capability. So
Mm.
there's a few ways we can do it. I mean, if the client feels that they can manage the production of the technical brief themselves, great. Even if they're not in a position to do that right at the very outset of a project, if they need somebody to step in and help them with that, we can do that as well. Because, I mean, to a certain extent, you're 100% right. I mean, the only way in which the service can actually be delivered in an optimal manner is if there's a very clear understanding as to what, initially at least, and accepting the fact that we're very, very agile in terms of what we actually deliver, and we do tend to deliver product in a very iterative way. But if there's to be no misunderstanding with the client as to what is going to be delivered from the start of a project. There does need to be proper technical documentation to support all of the project management setup and communication tools and so on and so forth. So if the client can do that, great. If the client can't do that, we can deliver that as a service. If the client is absolutely bootstrapped and doesn't want to spend money in advance on consulting and wants to get straight into delivery, I mean, all that we can do is workshop that out as best we can with the client and agree what will happen in the very early stages, with everybody accepting that this needs to be very, very agile, and there is no black and white definition as to what's going to come out of the back end of the project. Some clients are completely comfortable with that. Some aren't. So, I mean, in some cases, maybe even though we are very, very flexible, and probably as flexible as we can conceivably be, we probably can't deliver every project. But as I say, in the vast majority of cases, we can find a way to do it.
Right. And so you're probably now focused more on also lead generation and sales. So what maybe strategies do you use to generate new leads for your agency, obviously, and except your own network referrals and all that everybody has, what other channels do you use? Is there anything specific you're trying to do from a marketing standpoint, or?
Yeah, I suppose not to be dismissive of personal network and referrals, because I given the fact that, as I say, I've been in senior commercial roles for, 25 years. I would have a very, very strong personal network, and it does tend to bring in a large chunk of our new business, which means that to a certain extent on lead gen and marketing, I can afford to be a little bit lazy. I could be accused of that. I mean, I tend to have a pretty strong pipeline without doing a lot of cold outreach or without doing paid digital marketing to any significant extent. We also have a couple of very, very strong agency partners that constantly bring us new opportunities. I mean, on a very, very regular basis, introduce us to new brands that have requirements. That helps too, and again, allows me to be lazy in terms of outreach. So I'd say, if I look at our new business, I would say that probably approaching 40% of it comes from personal introductions, networking, referrals, existing and past clients, so on. I'd say 40% comes through our agency partner network, and then 20% comes through website, a certain amount of PPC that we would do. I mean, PPC in our business, as you well know, is almost like going down to a bookie's office. You can be very, very lucky or very, very unlucky. The problem is that the cost of each click is almost prohibitive unless you can do a lot of it and measure it very, very closely. And a lot of the ROI modeling that we've done around PPC campaigns that we've done in the past would not suggest that there is a very, very compelling case to do a lot of it.
Yeah.
So what we tend to do is we tend to focus on very, very specific niche PPC. So we would select specific industries where we would have a good track record, some existing large name clients that would be instantly recognizable, good case studies, good testimonials, and focus on very, very specific aspects or very specific requirements within those verticals. And we will do, on that basis, then we will do some very niche PPC. And that can work quite well. It's a little bit hit and miss, because obviously you're changing the campaign every time you do it, to a certain extent. So as I say, it is somewhat speculative, but as I say, it's worked reasonably well on occasion.
Right. Those 40% that you said of partners, are these the same agency partners that you have? Got it.
Yeah.
PPC doesn't really make sense for us. We do a ton of outreach though, in combination with events. So let's say we go to Web Summit, we book like 50 meetings there up front, and that makes a ton of difference. Or we organize dinners and meetups across the cities, and we invite people there through outreach, but the offer is compelling. Or I invite people on podcasts, right? It's always like a very good offer for people to exchange their time for. And even the biggest CEOs of unicorn startups agree to meet sometimes, which is, people
Yeah,
say it's impossible, but it is possible. So we are
yeah,
very different agency in that sense. We pick the companies we want to work with, because most agencies are CTO led, so they are technical founders which have no sales skills. And I'm a sales guy, coming from a sales background, probably like you. So I'm a very different in this approach, but we do have a ton of referrals and inbound as well. So that's awesome. So would you say now that you're more of a consultancy rather than a developer agency, like more of like a consulting company? Is that like a software consultancy, let's say?
probably. You know, I think that is probably fair. Yeah.
Got it. All right. So besides what we just went through, do you have any maybe favorite founder, entrepreneur that you follow throughout your career that would you'd recommend to check out and say we follow as well?
I to be honest, the answer to that is probably no, and probably multiple. I mean, there's nobody just off the top of my head
Yeah.
um, that I would recommend people engage with that they might not already be aware of. I've no secret insights that I could share with people in that regard. If
Yeah.
you give it a bit of thought, maybe at some point I would.
What about on the phone? Since you're a mobile app company, do you download some apps, and what are your favorite apps on the phone that you use?
Um, Given my sports background, I would have a lot of sports apps, lots
Mm,
and lots of sports apps. And I would use sports apps even in sports and for teams that I don't necessarily support or follow or have any affinity for, just to see what new things that they do. And obviously in the sports world, there's lots of stakeholders. There's individual teams and clubs. There are broadcasters and media outlets.
mm,
There are supporters clubs and supporters groups. And in all of those categories, I mean, there are lots of apps that are good. We used to consult into a number of sports organisations in terms of digital engagement. Um, did quite a bit of work in that area for a few years,
mm,
um, and without wanting to sound in any way conceited, I mean, a number of the emerging technologies in sport are things that we would have recommended the clients do 3-4 years ago, when maybe it was a little bit avant-garde and a little bit outside people's comfort zones. But a lot of those emerging technologies are coming into sports applications, now.
mm.
So part of the reason why I use as many sports apps as I do is to try to sort of get a feel for those emerging trends. And I mean, there's lots of good sports apps. The number of the American broadcasters, sports broadcasters apps are quite good. There are obviously a number of European teams that have good apps. Bayern Munich is a good app. Manchester City is a good app. Barcelona have a good app. So yeah, so that's me. Too much sport and too much digital, and sometimes they collide.
Yeah. And so final question, is it easier from your experience to run a two-person agency that has a big probably profit margin compared to what you used to have, but not enough maybe revenue? I don't know, but I'm just spitballing.
Mm.
What's the difference now to run a 40%, 30% agency versus a 2% like very lean company? Do you feel better? You probably work from home, you don't have an office, like what are the benefits, or what's the difference?
Yeah, I suppose from a lifestyle point of view, first and foremost, I mean, probably our largest partner agency is based in Italy.
Mm,
And I like being in Italy when it's raining in Ireland. And I now have all kinds of excuse to spend quite a bit of time in Italy, which is good.
yeah.
And I'm being slightly facetious, but I mean, I do get to travel quite a bit. So we have partner agencies in 6 countries.
Mhm.
Six, yeah. So I mean, that's interesting. And you're working with different people all of the time. I mean, the same people, but it's sort of, at different points in time.
Mhm.
So I mean, you're constantly developing relationships and um, getting to know new people. I mean, we have Ireland obviously have a European Championships qualification game against Slovakia coming up quite soon.
Mm.
So to be speaking to guys in Slovakia on a daily basis, I mean, it's
I'm
good
from
fun.
Slovakia, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, that level of sort of travel and interaction and cultural difference and the fun that sits around that, I mean, is great. You're right, I'm not tied to an office. I probably spend 50% of my time working from home. Well, say maybe 40%, and then 40% working directly with sort of clients and client meetings and client engagement, and then 20% with our partner agencies. So, I mean, every day is new, every day is different. Now, I mean, there are some benefits to owning your own agency and having your own staff, in that you develop, quite strong personal relationships with people and you get to know their families and all. And I mean, I do miss that to a certain extent. But yeah, as I say, it's more flexible, it's more dynamic. It's good. It's good fun.
Yeah, I used to work from home for 3 years, and I didn't like it because I just couldn't. I was missing a human connection, like to have people in the office around me.
I agree with that. Yeah.
But it's always different. I guess it depends, what you also want from your lifestyle and stuff. But thank you, Karl, for being here and explaining your amazing process. This is very enlightening. So where do you want people to go if they are from Ireland or UK or whenever, and they want to check out Appify and connect with you? How can they do that online?
They can do it through the website, or they can contact me directly by email. It's very simple. It's Karl with a K at Appify.digital. So, as I say, contact me through the website or through LinkedIn. You'll find me on LinkedIn pretty handy. So, as I say, whatever's easiest for people.
That sounds good. So, guys, go connect with Karl on LinkedIn, and we'll have the website linked down below. So, thank you very much for stopping by, and enjoy the day.
Pleasure. Thanks a million.